This week in Chutz La'aretz, Klal Yisrael is reading Parshas Korach, and one of the most fascinating elements in the episode of Korach and his rebellion is a small statement that garners a lot of attention. Moshe Rabbeinu calls to Dasan Aviram in Pasuk Yud Beis. He calls to Dasan Aviram, Vayishlach Moshe likro l'Dasan v'Avram ben Eliav. And what is their response? Vayomru, they said, Lo na'aleh, we will not come up. And the question is, what do you mean come up? We would have expected that Dasan Aviram would say, Lo ne'lech, lo navo, we won't go, we won't come. But what is this up? Where they're refusing to go up somewhere. So, kipshuto, there are a few possibilities. Even Ezra and others say that lo na'aleh is used because the Mishkan, where Moshe Rabbeinu was at a higher elevation than the rest of the Machane. Just like Yerushalayim is at a higher elevation, and Eretz Yisrael is at a higher elevation. So places that are kadosh are meant to be at a higher elevation. So the Mishkan was also at a higher elevation. So we're not going to come to the Mishkan, and when one goes to the Mishkan, he goes up. The Rashbam and others say that the word la'alos is used sometimes in context of a court. So for example, in Sefer Dvarim, it says ve'alsa yivimto hasharo. When the Yivama goes to court, she to Beit Din, she goes up. That's the word used when a person goes to Beit Din, they go up. So they're saying, but Dasan Aviram, we're saying we're not going to go up to your Beit Din, Moshe Rabbeinu. Parenthetically, Rav Hirsch points out that based on the Rashbam's pshat, something very interesting about Dasan Aviram's response. Moshe Rabbeinu was not necessarily summoning Dasan Aviram to a din Torah. He sent messengers, Vayishlach Moshe likro. He sent messengers to call them. Maybe it could have been a very friendly invitation to dialogue. Rav Hirsch points out in other places where Vayishlach likro, that combination, is used in a friendly manner. For example, in Parshas Yisro, when Yisro calls people, and in Parshas Kisisa, in a bit of a sinister context, the Torah says, don't intermarry, or be careful not to intermarry, that the people, if you're Mechutin, who's not Jewish, calls you to invite you to a Suda of Avodah Zarah. So that's a friendly invitation. So here as well, Rav says, Moshe Rabbeinu was issuing not a summons, he sent a messenger to, have a nice dialogue, a calm, friendly dialogue with Dasan Aviram to hear what's on their mind. And their response is, how dare you summon us to Beit Din? Lo na'aleh, we're not going to appear at your summons, right? So they are immediately treating him with a lot of suspicion and accusing him of, wielding authority when he just wants to dialogue. That's a parenthetical point. Rashi, however, back on the lo na'aleh, Rashi says, in Midrash comment, lo na'aleh, piem hichshilam, their mouth messed them up, ein lahem ela yirida. They're only going down. So when they say we won't go up, when we're not going to go up, the Midrash is bothered by the question we asked before. Why don't they just say we won't come, lo ne'lech, lo navo? Why do they say we won't go up? So Midrash says that this is a remez to the fact that they're going down. They're going down. Where are they going down? We know later in the story that Dasan Aviram, at least, and perhaps others as well, but certainly Dasan Aviram, are swallowed up by the earth. That is the most famous part of the story, probably the punishment of being, this unique punishment, being swallowed up by the earth. So it's very interesting that punishment is hinted to at this early stage in the story. So to understand why is that important, should be hinted to here in this phrase lo na'aleh, well, we have to ask a different question, which is, why is it important that Korach, that Dasan Aviram and perhaps Korach as well, and families were swallowed up by the earth? This strange punishment. The Ramban over there in Pasuk Chaf Tes asks this question. He says, we have other, unfortunately, we have other examples of rebellions in the Midbar. We have other examples of clashes between Moshe Rabbeinu and individuals or groups of Klal Yisrael, sometimes even all of Klal Yisrael. And we never have such an extreme punishment. What's unique here? So Ramban says, and others say as well, that this is a different type of rebellion. Because in this case, it was not just a matter of we don't have water, we don't have food this week, and as it's we're reading Chukas. And we have two examples of rebellions where people used pretty similar language. Why'd you take us out of Mitzrayim? We're not even Eretz Yisrael. The same kind of tainas that Dasan Aviram are making, we find in Chukas. And yet, in Chukas, there's punishments. It's not pretty. But nothing of the sort, like the ground opening up and swallowing anybody. Ramban says the difference is that here, Dasan and Aviram particularly, we actually don't see it as much in the words of Korach, but we see it particularly in the words of Dasan and Aviram. That Dasan and Aviram were not just voicing any old complaint. They were undermining the very authority of Moshe Rabbeinu. They were questioning whether he was a divinely inspired leader in the first place. Dasan and Aviram, we go back to our psukim, right after this, after they say Lo Na'aleh, they say, it's not enough that you took us out of the Eretz Avas Chalav Udvash of Mitzrayim. It's not enough that you didn't bring us to Eretz Yisrael, to a place of a real Eretz Avas Chalav Udvash, but you're even Sistarer Olim Gam Yisrael. You even dare to lord over us. Dasan Aviram are questioning that what they're saying is that unlike Korach and the 250 men who joined him, they're not complaining about the religious authority in Klal Yisrael or which part of Shevet Levi should get the Nesios. They're saying, our complaints, Moshe Rabbeinu, they go back to your leadership in Mitzrayim. We don't think that you have been a correct leader for us all the way since Mitzrayim. And that, says Ramban, that's kfira, because Moshe Rabbeinu was appointed by Kadosh Baruch Hu himself. Where does Ramban see this in the psukim? When Moshe Rabbeinu says, when he introduces this supernatural punishment of the ground swallowing, he says, "Bezos teidu'un ki Hashem shlachani," that Hashem sent me. La'asos eis kol ma'asim ha'ileh, ki lo milbi. This will prove that Hashem sent me to do all these things that I didn't. Ki lo milbi. This is not my individual choice. Rashi says, which ma'asim are we talking about? The ma'asim of Aaron being a Kohen Gadol, and Aaron's children being Kohanim, and Elitzaphan being the Nasi, right? Responding to Korach's tainos. The Ramban says, Kipshuto, no, that's not what Moshe is talking about. He's talking about taking us out of Mitzrayim. That lashon of shlichus, ki Hashem shlachani, we find that all over the place in reference to Moshe Rabbeinu as the shliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to take us out of Mitzrayim. Going all the way back to Parshas Shmos, Zelecha ha'oz kerochi shlachticha, right? Hashem says to Moshe, the sign that I sent you, or Vayishlach malach v'yotzei Mitzrayim. Hashem sent a malach. He sent Moshe Rabbeinu to take us out of Mitzrayim. Or at the very end of the Torah, in the Hesped from Moshe Rabbeinu, Asher shlacho Hashem la'asos b'eretz Mitzrayim. Hashem sent Moshe Rabbeinu. That shlichus, that unique status that Moshe Rabbeinu has, that he was a shaliach b'Kadosh Baruch Hu to take us out of Mitzrayim, to bring us to Har Sinai, to give us the Torah, to be the agent of Torah B'chsav, Torah Sheba'al Peh, everything. That is what Moshe Rabbeinu was defending. And who accused him? Who accused him of never being a divinely appointed leader? Dasan Aviram. They're the ones. Korach maybe got dragged along by them into the ground. If he went into the ground, it was because he was dragged along with them. They're the ones who were most deserving of the supernatural punishment to demonstrate that their taina against Moshe Rabbeinu was completely unfounded. Which words subtly hint to the point that Dasan Aviram were challenging Moshe's leadership from the very beginning? Lo Na'aleh. When they said Lo Na'aleh, perhaps like Rav Hirsch says, they're saying to Lo Na'aleh, they're saying, who are you to summon us to a Beit Din? Are you the leader of Klal Yisrael? Who appointed you? From the very beginning, we questioned your leadership all the way back from the time you took us out of Mitzrayim. The Rashbam, we'll end with this, the Rashbam says that there's a klal upratu chlal. Right? Something we find in halachic context. Rashbam finds here in this story. Klal, lo na'aleh, prat, ki ha'elisanim eretz zavas chavdvash v'chulei. And what's the chozer v'kolel? At the end of Pasuk Yudalid, ha'inei hanashim ha'im tenaker, lo na'aleh. So they begin and end their taina with lo na'aleh. And in the middle they say, because you took us out of Mitzrayim, we're not going to respond. So what are they saying? We're not going to respond to your summons because you took us out of Mitzrayim illegitimately. Who were you to take us out of Mitzrayim? They're trying to undermine Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership from the very beginning. And that is why the Midrash says, Lo na'aleh, pihem ichshilam, ein lehem eli rida. You see from their words, Lo na'aleh, that they are questioning Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership from the very beginning. They're not like Korach. They are trying to argue that Moshe Rabbeinu is not a divinely appointed shliach in the first place. And for that, and we see that from the way they say Lo na'aleh, and from that, the Midrash foreshadows that eventually they will have to be punished in a unique way. Ein lehem eli rida. They have to go into the ground. They have to disappear entirely from the face of the earth, because because it has to be so clear to us forever and ever the authority of Moshe Rabbeinu as a Kadosh Baruch Hu's Shaliach.